So with that, I want to say good afternoon and happy Health Literacy Month. Today is the last day. And of course, happy Halloween to you all. Thank you all for coming to today's webinar, Harm Reduction in Action, Language as Harm Reduction. My name is Tiffany Chavis, and I am the Outreach and Education Librarian for Region 1 of the Network at the National Library of Medicine. We are located out of University of Maryland, Baltimore. I want to let you know I'm going to keep my camera off for this session in hopes of avoiding any possible complications. So I'm going to do that right now. So while many of you may be familiar with the NNLM, others may not. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the network at the National Library of Medicine. So the NNLM is funded by the National Library of Medicine, which is the world's largest biomedical library. The NNLM is the outreach arm of the National Library of Medicine. The NLM is a part of the National Institutes of Health, which is the nation's leading research agency. The NNLM has what we call ROCs, or regions, offices, and centers, and it's made up of 7 regional medical libraries. University of Maryland, Baltimore is one of them, 4 national information centers, and 3 national offices. They provide training, funding, and engagement opportunities to over 9,000 NNLM member organizations. So if you would like to learn more about the NNLM and membership, you can go to our website that you probably guessed it, nnlm.gov. So moving on to why we're all here. Now let me introduce to you today's speaker. You may remember her if you attended any of our other harm reduction webinars in the past. So MaHRTI is a coordinator with the Maryland Harm Reduction Training Institute. Ms. Corey is a Morgan State University graduate with a bachelor's degree in psychology. She has 6 years of experience with the Lighthouse Studies at PEER Point and BESURE, which are 2 harm reduction research programs through Johns Hopkins University. They focus on Baltimore City residents with HIV and STD high-risk behaviors. Before joining Behavioral Health System Baltimore, Miera was the evaluation coordinator for Wraparound Systems of Care and the National Child Traumatic Stress Initiative. All of these programs are at the Institute for Innovation and Implementation, which is a part of University of Maryland, Baltimore. So welcome, Miera, and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the floor is yours.
Awesome. Just making sure everyone can hear me okay. I am feeling a little under the weather, so in my mind, I'm quieter than normal. So again, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be closing out language literacy month with you all, and we're going to be talking about language as harm reduction, and how what we say and how we say it, how it can impact folks with or without our knowledge. So hopefully this will be of use to you all. So we're just going to briefly go over some objectives, talk about the language of stigma, talk about some person-centered language, and how we speak without words. Oh, sure. Sorry. Is this better? I saw in the chat for me to get closer. Okay. Great. So by the end of this training, Um, you, we will have defined stigma and explained how language plays a key role in that, and stigmatization. Um, Again, like I said, we're going to explore different types of person-centered language and how it can be used in different fields, and there are different ways that we communicate before we say a thing. All right. So if you could put in the chat uh, just some what you would consider some common stigmatizing words or phrases. Yep, all of these. So for those who are um, reading along, excuse me, listening along but not following the chat, we have words like hysterical, acting bipolar, crazy, fat, un was it unsafe sex, overdramatic, addict, right? Um, yeah, yeah. All of all of these all of these are definitely stigmatizing terms. Uh, one that I will put in here that is used very often um, is, that is used very often and how it's used is the word ghetto. Oh, that's so ghetto. Oh, that's so ghetto. Earth is the ghetto. That's something that we hear often, and how that, you know, um, and how stigmatizing that can be. Ooh, somebody said you so trash. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's a definite one. That's a definite one. Um, so yeah, those are all stigmatizing common words and phrases that we hear, that, you know, that we tend to use, whether we are intending to be uh, stigmatizing, or sometimes we are saying it amongst our peers in jest, and we don't mean ill will, but the roots of those phrases, or the original sentiments behind those phrases, uh, are rooted in stigma and sometimes racism, depending on, what the term is, right? And they're so woven into our vernacular and our everyday thought pattern that a lot of us don't even think about it. And I say that as a human in this world who has said several of these things, right? There is I'm almost sure that there is nothing in the chat that any of you have put that I have not said at some point in my life, right? Because I'm a human and I had to learn and evolve. And so I'm saying that to say that if you are currently using some of these words and phrases, this is not to shame you. This is me saying we're all human and we've all done it, right? And it's how we were taught to communicate with one another. So the reason why we're discussing this in this way is because words do matter, right? We always grew up with the sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will never hurt us. If that ain't the biggest crock of crap you have ever heard, right? Like, um, if somebody punches me today, it might hurt. I might have a bruise and I can get over it, right? But there are things that I am still trying to shake off in my childhood, and I am almost 45 years old because those words have stuck with me. I couldn't remember uh, uh, a spanking I ever really got, and my mom was a champion. I swear she had. She had a trophy, right? But some of those words that my peers used against me, are still stick with me and come up in therapy today. And so what that looks like for people who are, using substances, whether they are using it recreationally or chaotically, is that people with substance use disorders are viewed more negatively than those with physical or psychiatric disabilities, even among highly trained substance use disorder and mental health clinicians, right? Like, I don't know if any of you have ever been uh, um, in a medical situation and you hear the nicknames that folks have for folks, frequent flyer, uh, you know, unnecessarily combative on floor 3, you know, and we say these things in these settings and have a tendency to say them in front of the people that we're talking about, like they're not there, like they can't hear you, right? They're just on drugs. They're not deaf. They can hear you and they have cognitive ability and they know you're talking about them, right? And so when we think that those words don't impact people, we find out that's not true, because we see that no matter how educated we are, folks were more significantly likely to assign blame and prefer more punitive, aka jail or felonious sentences, versus therapeutic responses when shown vignettes where the term substance abuser was used rather than a person with substance use disorder, right? Because the term substance abuser automatically connotates that someone is doing something wrong, right? Abuse is wrong. And so if someone is an abuser or is abusing something, you already are going in with the connotation that they're doing something wrong and you should treat them as such, right? So there was a public perception study, and the term abuse was found, like I just said, to have a high association with negative judgments and punishments, because that is how it is defined, and the consequences of abuse are typically something punitive, right? Health professionals have showing negative attitudes were found to negatively affect the quality of care and ensuing treatment and outcomes. Okay. We have all had a bad day. We have all taken that bad day out on someone who did not deserve it, whether that be a loved one, whether it be the stranger at Wendy's, uh, or it could just be the door handle that for some reason wanted to grab your jeans on your way out the door as you were already late. And so now you're yelling at a door and a door handle, right? We've all done that. But what happens is, especially with health professionals, they are typically seeing people on the worst day of their lives, at their worst moments, at their most vulnerable, their most scared. People do and say very mean and angry things or act out when they're in those situations. And so the people that is dumped upon most often, i.e. your health professionals, they tend to equate that animosity and negative action to the people and not the situation that's happening. And so doing that day in and day out, that starts to erode the quality of care that you give someone, because over time, folks are starting to see or feel that those folks are not worth the same level of compassion as others. And that starts with how they talk about folks, right? The shame and concerns about social and economic and legal consequences of disclosing a substance use disorder most definitely keeps people from seeking help, right? So A lot of folks think that that kind of statement only applies to those of us who are down on their luck, right? So a lot of folks feel that statement only applies for, as an example, to those who are unhoused and need to seek treatment. But that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, is absolutely not the case. That applies to everyone. That applies to everyone who is on that call. If someone on this call is experiencing substance use disorder, the shame and concerns that they feel about disclosing that to their job to say, or to their insurance company to say, hey, I need help, is terrifying. What if they lose their job? That's a big thought, right? What, even if they don't lose their job, what if everybody finds out, right? You know? Like, and then how does that impact how they treat me, you know? So these are the things that are very real for anyone who is dealing with substance use disorder. And all of that starts with how we talk to folks and how we hear it, because they hear it every day. And while somebody might be joking, they don't know that. And it's not a joke to them. It may be their life. So person-centered language. This is something that we may have all heard about before, but I just want to define it very quickly. Person-centered language is exactly what it says. It puts the person first. People are so much more than their substance use disorder. They are more than their physical or mental health diagnoses. There's so much more than that, right? And using person-centered language or person-first language is really about respecting the dignity, the worth, and the unique qualities and strengths of a person, and not just what they do, right? A person's identity and self-image is very closely linked to the words that you use to describe them. So saying someone by their name first, and it's something that they have as opposed to something that they are, is a different mind shift. So a good example of that, even if we take substance use out of this, I am, you can't see, but I am what is called a plus size person by this world, right? I have been told my entire life that I am fat. Not that I have fat, not that fat is in my body and that I may have more than some. No, that I am fat. I am every single fat cell, and I just happen to be intelligent as a consequence of that, or in spite of that, right? And so being told that you are fat in that way makes you feel like that is something wrong. And then you know, contaminate that with everything else that society tells you, but nobody tells you, oh, it's not, if somebody has a physical disability, it's not, normally, sometimes it is, but normally it's not, oh, here comes, short-legged Chris. He's real smart about, harm reduction. People don't say that. No one would dare say that. But certain ways that we talk about folks, or how folks live or are physically made up, some of those are socially acceptable for ridicule when they're really not. And so what person first or person-centered language does is tries to level the vocal playing field by seeing people as people before anything else, which is something we don't really do. So Here is a chart, and this is, I apologize, this may be difficult to see on the screen, but it will be easier to see in the slides that you'll receive later. So person-centered language is for everyone. And so here I have 3 different charts that take a look at different ways of stigmatizing language is used in different settings. Okay. So some dehumanizing terms are felons, ex-felons, prisoners, inmates, delinquents, prisoners' families, right? So these are all things that we would hear in the law enforcement or the carceral system. These are things that we hear very often. Some alternatives to those dehumanizing labels would be people convicted of a crime or felony, people or person who are or were incarcerated, people on probation or on parole, people who are system impacted, people with an alternative to prisoners' families would be people with incarcerated loved ones, right? That right there tells you that A, I'm talking about the person in front of me, and that they love someone who, is negatively impacted by, the carceral system, right? Notice how love is still there. People still are worthy of love when they're impacted by the system, right? Like, that's the thing that we forget. People still love those people. Yes, they may have done a crappy thing, but somebody still loves them. And that person who loves them may get a lot of flack for that. Okay. In the middle here, we have what's called recovery dialects. So this is a chart that may be a little confusing, but it's a very situational. So there are very few places that are acceptable, or it is looked the other way to use some of these stigmatizing language. Why is that? Because the people with the stigmatized behavior have designated a safe space for the ways that they talk about their existence and the world around them. So what does that look like? These are things that we have seen, whether it be in real life or on TV, but we've all heard, hi, my name is John and I'm an addict. Hi, my name is Megan and I'm an alcoholic. All right. That's how people, as we know it, tend to address themselves in a recovery meeting, mutual aid meeting setting. After I just told you, let's not use the word addicts, but that is their safe space with themselves. That is their chosen vernacular for that space. Think about it like if you ever have a sibling or maybe like a really good cousin, you can talk crap about them all you want, but you be ready to throw hands if somebody else does it, right? Because within that nucleus, within those family walls, y'all are family, and we can say what we want in that space. But everybody else, if you are not a part of this crew, clique, unit, you better hush it, because now it's offensive. And some areas where you may hear words that are stigmatizing are those, mutual aid meetings. And those are closed situations, right? It's a closed loop for a reason. And honor that and respect that. And know that somebody may use the term addict in a mutual aid meeting, but the moment you use the same thing in another situation, so say like a town hall meeting, there might be some smoke in the city. Yes, those meetings are called anonymous for a reason. Exactly. And just as a point, don't keep it anonymous. Just keep it anonymous. Don't take what you learn out there. Learn in there about someone else outside. That is a safe space. So when we're talking about person-centered language, when we're thinking about folks in the mental health space or in the LGBTQ or in the physical health space, some other negative languages that we've heard, which you mentioned earlier, all of them are here. So we've got addict and clean and dirty. We've got disabled and handicapped. We've got gay, lesbian, bi used as nouns. Excuse me. We have terms like transgendered, a transgender, like as in a noun. We have the term sex change or pre-op, post-op. Those are not comfortable, nice words to describe folks. So to switch that a little bit and to be more affirming, you think about words such as person who is seeking treatment for substance use disorder, person who has or person who has been diagnosed with XYZ, a person with a psychiatric disorder, a person living with HIV, AIDS, diabetes, whomever, using gay, lesbian, bisexual as adjectives, not as a noun, right? So my name is Miera and I am bisexual. Not bisexual Miera works at MaHRTI, right? So that's what that looks like. Using terms like transgendered person when talking about surgery, talking about using the term transition or gender affirming or gender confirming surgery, right? Using words like those, talking to those folks in those communities. And what that looks like to them and how they feel, right? Getting input from those folks is really, really important. So here are a couple more that are based in schools. So, you know, student receiving special education services is person-centered and is so much better than special education student, right? She's anorexic versus, you know, is deficit focused or not affirming, but saying she has anorexia, right? She has it. Anorexia doesn't have her, right? See? It's a gentle but affirming shift. A person has something, they are not had by it. And that means you're seeing the person more. And that allows you to talk to and treat that person because you're seeing the person first. Okay. So when we're talking about having welcoming conversations, phrasing is important. And we've talked a lot about phrasing, right? switching your words, switching the words around, okay? And the next thing is tone. Sometimes we get really passionate about stuff. Sometimes we're in a bad mood and we're really blasé about stuff. But the person that you're speaking to doesn't always know how to interpret it. So trying to use a neutral tone when you're talking to folks, that way you are not putting an overemphasis on one thing, which somebody may interpret as positive or negative, right? That's a thing people do, especially a person with trauma, very caught up on the inflection in someone's words. We've all heard the jokes of, that high sounded a little different. Are you mad? That's a trauma response. And that's somebody taking in account your tone, whether you meant it or not, okay? The other thing is body language. We say so much without even uttering a word, right? So you may think that sitting with your arms crossed like this, lean back in your chair, that's you relaxing. For most folks, that might be a sign of aggression, or you're angry, or you're not open to what is being discussed. So relaxing your shoulders, uncrossing your arms or your legs, softening your facial expressions can go a long way to welcoming someone else's, conversational tone, right? It may help them to open up. Checking your assumptions and expectations at the door. When we are in harm reduction and when we are in the helping folks field, it is about what is the goal of the patient and how do we help them? How do we help the person in front of us who is asking us for help with substance use disorder? Not us telling them what they need. Oh, you need to stop using drugs. That's not even my goal. That's not even why I came here. I have a splinter, right? We hear it a lot when we're talking about people with weight, talking about, oh gosh, I have a horrible migraine. Have you tried losing weight? What the hell that got to do with anything? That's what people with substance use feel like every time they go into someone's office. That's how people are treated, right? Understand your own triggers and know when you need to walk away. You can't help any and everyone, right? You are a human. You are a person, what? A person first. You are a person who works in a helping profession. And in that means you have triggers. For example, I have a hard time working with someone who looks like my sibling who has their own struggles. It is very difficult for me because I don't want to be a person who is working in, harm reduction when I'm talking to that person. I want to be their sister and be like, what is you doing? What are you doing? Stop it. Because I love them. I'm compassionate. You know what I mean? Those things, it is hardest to do what you're trained with those you love. And sometimes those people that come through the door look so much or evoke in you the love that you feel for someone else that you may not be able to be the best one to handle them. And that's okay. What you do is you do a warm handoff to another staff member. You don't need to tell them why. Just say, hey, you know what? My bandwidth is a little full, or I need to take a break. Can you help Miss Jean for me, please? And then you go to be a better person for yourself and for the next person you help. And at the very, very least, if you are unsure of whether you are doing the right or wrong thing, go back to the basics. Respect, compassion, dignity, and non-judgment. The things that you would want for yourself give that to someone else. Give them that same grace, right? So here we go. Here are some words that we hear in the substance use field and that we hear every day. And here are some alternatives, right? They may be helpful, and it may be difficult to start switching it at first, but be intentional about it. And then it'll become second nature, right?
You have a question about this, Miera. Would you like to take it now or save it for later?
Sure, I'll take it now.
So you
But
see it in the chat from Miss Emily Peterson, and it's asked in reference to individuals with autism. And the question per se,
is it this one, the one that at 227? I often come across the conflict within the
yeah,
autism community of trying to be respectful by using person-centered language and it being communicated that it's preferred to use autistic when communicating or working with folks who are in those communities. Is this an instance where it's best to defer to their preferred language when talking to them, but out of respect, use person-centered language when writing materials for them or about them? Okay. Emily, yes. So when you are talking to the community, to the autism community, if they are telling you that we as a community prefer to use this term, as long as you are checking in with them and saying, and I'm going to go on just this assumption, even though I did tell you leave your assumptions at the door, but assuming that you are not a part of that community, or they are assuming that you're not, as long as they are comfortable with you using that language to them, then I think that you are okay in that situation. However, when you are writing about that community, using person-centered language is the way to give the most respect to that community. You can put in there that, several conversations within the community, this is how they prefer to be addressed in person, but for literature wise, we use person-centered language. Does that help at all?
it's a big thank you from Emily.
Okay, good. And talking about, and that's the thing about language, never mind the silent letters that are all in the American language. It's that typically the way that we speak to one another is a bit different than how we write about one another. And they don't always match up. And that sucks. Because you always feel like you're behind the 8 ball, right? You're like, dang, I had it right yesterday. And then I wrote it down and now I'm wrong again. Language is so fluent and always changing. And even I am not the expert, but I get stuff wrong all the time. And I'm always trying to figure out what words to use and apologizing when I have messed up because I mess up because I'm a human. So again, choosing your words wisely, be affirming, right? Affirming doesn't mean that you always agree with the decision someone has or the path someone has made for themselves. But A, that's not your job because that's not your life. But also, it takes a lot for anyone to make any sort of change. And so affirming someone's change to do something better for themselves is literally the very least that you can do for a person, right? And if that is something as simple as affirming to them that they are not clean or dirty in regards to their substance use, that their objects are not clean or dirty in that regard. When we have words like sterile or used, which have a more clinical, more non-negative, non-shameful connotation, right? We're getting the same point across, are we not? But one makes you feel like you've done something wrong. The other one makes you feel, or generally makes you feel, about as sterile as it is, if it's cured in an autoclave. It's those little things past what we call tacit judgment, right? That passive judgment in our words. Because even though the words don't have anything, the connotation, the social context behind it, everyone knows those. Okay. So that is my time for today. I am opening up the floor for questions and discussions if there are any. I really, really, really love doing these sessions for you all. I really hope that you get something out of them or get your mind to thinking. So I'll hush, and if there are questions, I would love to hear them or comments.
If you all want to take notice in the chat that the link has been posted for the evaluation for both MLA-CE and CHES credit. And it looks like there's a question from Emily asking about slides. And yes, Emily, we can make the slides of it. All that information will be sent out when we have the video as well.
And thank you so much for your kind words, Carrie. I really appreciate it. I do enjoy educating others. And I do just generally enjoy talking to people and trying to humanize what we do, right? And humanize who we help. Aw, you guys are so sweet. I I really do read the comments, and I read the evaluations that you do. You all have been so kind. I'm really glad that you enjoy these sessions. I highly recommend any of our MaHRTI trainings. You can join our listserv, and our longer form trainings are always available. You're more than welcome. And let's see, if a patron visits the library from a specific community of practice and is searching for resources, it is best to communicate in a language-affirming manner and search for resources using similar techniques. Also, has the literature caught up with the language, or can we best use gray literature to locate information as discussed today? So language is, like I said, language is fluid, right? And by the time you've written it down, it's probably already changed, right? Especially when we're talking about the social context of language, right? And so, yes, using those person-centered language when you are searching for terms in the research, yes. I would say using person-centered language would be helpful. If you are looking for antiquated or historical information, and I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years ago, it may actually help you, unfortunately, to search stigmatized terms to get some of that older information, because that was the terms that were used back then. I'm not sure what you would use it for or how you would use it. All of it has some sort of value. But again, that may be something that might be helpful. Uh, Alice says that for librarians, one way that stigmatized language often comes up is in literature searches, both in the questions we receive and in the controlled vocabulary that often uses outdated or stigmatized terms. I find it useful to have conversations with patrons to say that we may need to include outdated terms in those searches. Woohoo!
Funny you say that. I'm actually doing some work around that now.
Yay! Thank you, Tiffany. So the question in the chat, if you didn't see it, is they were asking, I'm assuming everyone on the panel, but is there any known efforts to use person-affirming language for government resources? Apparently, the wonderful Tiffany here is doing just that, and I love that.
Yeah, well, it's quite the process because again, you're working, I know we're working with communities directly to get that language, and this is in reference to not necessarily mesh terms, but how people are described in description when doing searches. So as we all know, taking mesh out of the equation with the Library of Congress, everything has to be approved and so forth. But the good thing is Library of Congress is on board with the need to update a lot of these subject headings. So I would just say it's to be continued.
Awesome. And just one of those things, and one of the things I want to add, and just in general to those who are in the library sector and doing some of these researches, some of the medical biases that happen and are continuing to happen in regards to persons of color. So when we're talking about, say, like a medical textbook, and they're talking about what cyanosis may look like in a person, that is usually not based on what it may look like in someone that is highly melanated, right? For someone like myself who is, highly melanated, I may not turn blue, right? That is a stigmatization or a distortion that the medical community may not be aware that they are continuing to perpetuate. So make sure that you are keeping up with thinking about what are, besides Grey's Anatomy, not the book, not the show. I mean, book, the show too, but still. But besides Grey's Anatomy textbook, what else is out there, or where can I find resources that may look like the population that I'm actually serving? Never forget that. Yes, work in medical research still continues to perpetuate stigmatized terms and to describe various ethnicities and races. Ooh, yeah. There are a lot of folks, as much as people love it or hate it, but on social media, on my favorite substance of choice, TikTok, there are, several creators. There's a doctor that I, follow who does great videos on what conditions look like on highly melanated skin. I would highly recommend you taking a look at him if you come up with questions or come across questions or need another resource. Visual DX is good resources for, yes. Thank you. Vaseline, Vaseline, Hue, thank you, Emily, and thank you, Alice. I'm going to add those to my list of resources because I wasn't even aware of those. So thank you.
It looks like we have a question from Carrie, and she is asking, how do we confront that when others continue to push to use those terms?
So,
And she says even within groups it's difficult to find the right terms.
Okay, I'm gonna start with what I call the PC answer. PC answer is, if you can, try to assess mentally what they are trying to get at. Like, someone mentally do the gymnastics for them. Oh, speaking more specifically, African American, Black, white, Caucasian. So, okay, so here's the thing. When we are talking about folks, right, and we are talking about them in a medical context, and we're talking about folks negatively. When I say negatively, I'm talking about uplifting one group over another based on things that we cannot control. Decentering what is considered the gold standard and who it's based off of is really important, right? So challenging that in the moment can be intimidating and scary, but it is important. And I realize it may be something that is on the fly, like you may not have your Googles right in front of you, but if you are feeling a way, if you hear something, see something, say something. And if you say something in the moment and someone challenges you and you don't have a rebuttal, that's fine. Why is that fine? Because it takes no thought at all, really, to disparage someone. But it does take a lot of thought to come back and do your research and come back with proof. Because people, we're all adults here, people talk shit about other people all the time, right? That takes no thought at all. What does take thought is to put your neck on the line and say, hey, I don't agree with that. And I took an additional 5 minutes to find the information as to why what you're saying is not factual, but here are the facts, right? Because it's out there. And I know you're right, Carrie. It is very challenging. It's challenging for me because as someone who is in several what's considered marginalized groups, it is terrifying because I have been browbeat to not speak up. And so it triggers my fight or flight response. Sometimes these training groups of folks where those challenges come up triggers my fight or flight. Sometimes I'll be 2 seconds from crying, not because I'm scared, because I want to yell and I want to cuss so bad and I got to be professional. Y'all been there. But it's not always easy to speak up and say the right thing. But the more you do it, the less it'll terrify you. And the more you become the person who speaks up for others, people will see that and respect that. People will see you advocate for them. They will see it. You don't have to die on your hill every single time. It's not your cross every single time, but people see who consistently show up for them and who stand up for them and who fight for what's right. Even in a room where they are trying to be actively silenced, people will see you and hear you. That's the best that I have. And I appreciate and I understand how terrifying that can be and how unsatisfying that answer may be, which is basically jump off the cliff, go ahead and do it. Like, like that's an easy way to say it, but that's how it feels. It feels like I'm jumping off a cliff. You standing in the middle of rounds or wherever, going up against doctors, and they're saying all this stuff, and you're like, hey, how about that? That's wrong. And not only that, one of my favorite things in this world is, and it's a lesson, and it's a favorite thing in this world, and it's terrifying to me, but we almost lost one of the greatest athletes in the world. We almost lost Serena Williams. Undoubtedly, one of the greatest athletes in this world, because she had a baby and she caught a blood clot. And this superior athlete was battling her doctors in a highly credentialed hospital about how she felt about within her own body and that something wasn't right. And they wouldn't listen to her because who is she? A woman, an athlete, a Black woman. Her husband's rich, right? But none of that meant anything. Never mind the fact that she is someone who is so in tune with her body that she knows it better than anyone else. And even then, those biases almost cost her her life. So her speaking up for herself and having her husband back her up and using his voice, his money, his mere skin color to back her up was everything, and is the reason why she's still here today. So when you speak up for those folks, that is what you're doing. You're being the reason that someone else is still here today. Don't lose sight of that. All right, I got my 3-minute warning. I just wanted to let you know that those are the things that are on my mind. These are the things that could help you if you so choose to add them to your life. And if you'd love to see more trainings, please check us out at MaHRTI.com, or excuse me, MaHRTI.org. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.